I'm going to stop here for now in describing the historical Paul by giving you an example of how knowing a person's worldview and culture and life context matters so much when interpreting what he or she has to say. I'm going to take this example not from Paul, but from his master, Yeshua. I do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, because we see that even Jesus Christ was not a blank slate. At least what we might characterize as the human attribute of him had a definite personal worldview and a life context we need to grasp so that we can correctly understand what he meant by what he said. After all, he was a rural Galilean Jew. He was a craftsman. And he communicated with and he lived among other blue-collar, everyday Jews. And the life context I want to highlight is that Yeshua's world was the world of the synagogue, was not the world of the temple. And second, although he didn't belong to any party that we are aware of, it's my opinion that he was very likely closest in religious philosophy to that of the Essenes. Nonetheless, even though we are told that he had no formal religious training, it was the world of the synagogue that he lived in and he frequented, not the world of the temple. In fact, the New Testament record shows he only visited Jerusalem and the temple during the biblical feast days. That's the only time he went. And that was in order to obey the laws of Moses. Thus, he well knew the teachings of the rabbis. Now, he certainly didn't need training in the Word of God. He was the Word of God. The point is, he was quite familiar with the terms of the synagogue because that was part of standard everyday Jewish life. Now, the example I want to give you comes from Yeshua's most famous and extensive speech, the Sermon on the Mount. And after plainly and emphatically stating in Matthew 17 through 19 that he did not come to change or to abolish the law of Moses or of the prophets, so no one should interpret what he's saying in that light, then in verse 21, we read this: "You have heard that our fathers were told, 'Do not murder,' and that anyone who commits murder will be subject to judgment." Okay. When a Jewish teacher or a rabbi is in a debate, a midrash, or he's instructing on the Torah, the first thing they say is what a prominent teacher or rabbi has previously said about a Bible passage. Christ says that what this crowd of Jews before him had been told by their earlier teachers of their fathers was, do not murder because they'll be judged for it. But now, in typical rabbinical fashion, Christ gives his interpretation of the commandment to not murder. So in the next verse, Matthew 5:22, he says this: "But I tell you that anyone who nurses anger against his brother will be subject to judgment, that whoever calls his brother you good for nothing will be brought before the Sanhedrin, that whoever says fool incurs the penalty of burning in the fire of Gehinnom." Now, for Yeshua's followers, this was Yeshua's oral Torah, his tradition about what the commandment to not murder means. And despite all the erroneous teachings we've heard, that essentially Christ lessened the restrictions of the commandment of Moses, thereby making it easier, less burdensome. In fact, we find he made them much stricter. Here, merely harboring anger, even just saying something unkind against a brother, meaning a fellow Hebrew, was considered to break the commandment against murder. See, the rather standard Christian teaching on this passage is that Yeshua was speaking against the law of Moses and essentially canceling the commandments from Mount Sinai and replacing them with his own commandments. Had you been a Jew in that day and regularly attended the synagogue, you would have heard this form of debate and teaching countless times. It in no way challenged or changed the law of Moses. It was simply an issue of how to correctly interpret the law of Moses.